Russell Wilson is officially a Denver Bronco, and he was introduced to the media on Wednesday, and one thing is clear. He is not scared of competition. He is ready to take the Broncos to the next level against the rest of the National Football League. We talk about what we learned from Russell Wilson's press conference. What did he say about the AFC West? Plus, we take a look at what's next for this Denver Broncos in free agency. You get that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome back into a brand new episode with Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked On NFL Network, your team every day from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, joined alongside by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger. Both of us, we cover the Denver Broncos for the Locked On Network and 9 News Broncos Country. Let's ride. Yes, that's the new term that we're going to be using here in Broncos Country, courtesy of Russell Wilson. You can get this podcast free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format. You can watch us here on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news content coverage. I just purchased 2 Russell Wilson Color Rush jerseys, and one lucky follower subscriber here on the show will be entered to win one of those jerseys once we get to 10K subscribers here on YouTube. So if you know a Broncos fan out there, share this podcast with them, and let's continue to talk all things Broncos. Sayre, a lot of energy in Dove Valley here with the introduction of Russell Wilson yesterday at the UCHealth Training Center in Inglewood, Colorado, man. Like I said, you and I have been through a lot of different press conferences throughout, just covering the Broncos, writing about the team, just dating all the way back. This one felt different than all that. Look, we've been introduced to Brian Dawkins. Peyton Manning's was a good one. But, man, Russell Wilson really stole the show on Wednesday.
He really did, Cody, and it did feel different, even though it's almost 10 years exactly since the Broncos signed Peyton Manning in free agency, which is really cool to think about, right? I mean, 10 years ago, I think I found out about Peyton Manning signing with the Broncos, Cody. I'm pretty sure I found out about it on my BlackBerry at the time. I was probably playing like Brick Breaker on the old BlackBerry, and all of a sudden, I decided, let's check Twitter. Do I have enough data for that or whatever? I mean, those are the times we were living in back then, and it's been 10 years since that time, which is crazy. Like, I was talking to my brother about it. I was like, it's been 10 years since we signed Peyton, and he's like, wow, that was 10 years ago. It's like, here we are today, George Payton, and you can feel that energy, Cody, of these guys understand. They've been part of now arguably the biggest trade in NFL history. I know maybe more picks have been traded in the past or whatever, but I would say in terms of the player coming back to a new team, I would say this is arguably, if not the biggest trade ever made in the NFL. And you can tell these guys understand that. And that's the energy, that's the vibe from this whole press conference that I was getting.
There is a newfound energy here in Dove Valley, which is so nice because Broncos fans, like I said, just a month ago, Sayre, Broncos Country was kind of doom and gloom in a sense. They're like, man, what are the Broncos really going to do at quarterback? Well, guess what? Russell Wilson is officially the guy. You know who else was excited? Nathaniel Hackett. Now, real quick, I just want to play the clip here. I want to roll it here on Locked On Broncos of what Nathaniel Hackett first said when coming up to the podium yesterday in Dove Valley.
Wow. Come on, y'all. Russell Wilson. Holy very exciting.
Man, just a lot of excitement there from Nathaniel Hackett. One of the things that George Payton said in the presser, he said, because one of the things too, George Payton notified Nathaniel Hackett, hey, we're going to pursue Russell Wilson. We're going to trade for him. And he said, would you be okay with that? Nathaniel Hackett said, F yes, which, look, like I said, you get a chance to get a franchise guy. It is there. But, Sayre, really a major tip of the cap here to Albert Breer in the Monday morning quarterback column. The backstory of the Broncos' actual trade acquisition of Russell Wilson is very, very good. You can obviously go on my Twitter account. You can go to Albert Breer and share it out there. But here's the backstory here. And George Payton has something he's going to frame in commemoration of this trade happening. But he and John Schneider were meeting at a bar during the NFL Scouting Combine. And John Schneider had written down on George Payton's valet ticket what the trade offer would be for the Broncos to be able to acquire Russell Wilson. Now, obviously, he wrote down 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and then the list of players that were there. And they weren't sure whether or not it was going to happen because obviously they have a brand new owner stepping in there, a newish owner there in terms of the Allen family. So there was a lot of questions as to whether or not it would happen, but ultimately it was something that both sides agreed upon. And once again, the really thing that kind of came out of that, it was noted that George Payton only told a handful, less than a handful of people. He told Nathaniel Hackett and maybe one other person. Same thing with Schneider. So once again, as we know, George Payton, very tight-lipped on things that will improve the Broncos and anything coming out of that building.
And that's so cool, right? It's so cool to know that George Payton has those kind of processes in place. And it sounds almost like the movie Draft Day to me, Cody. It's like, did he pull out the sheet that says Russell Wilson no matter what? Like, does he have
I
one of
love
those
it.
in his back pocket? Like, I love that kind of stuff. And ironically, the Seahawks were heavily involved in that film as well. So I think that definitely it's like a movie, and maybe some kind of documentary will be made about it beyond just the Behind the Broncos series or Building the Broncos series that they've been doing. But man, it's really a big deal. Like Broncos country, this is a huge thing that's gone down in our team's history, in NFL history, in sports history. Russell Wilson is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, in my opinion, and I think a lot of others would share that opinion. He's an all-time great. And so for him to be coming to Denver now, of course, Nathaniel Hackett is excited. I love the little tidbit that they gave where George Payton was like, well, we got to do our due diligence, right? Like we need to watch the film. And he's like, no, he's kicked my butt for however many years now. I don't need to see anything else from him. That's just the kind of guy that Nathaniel Hackett is. And of course, you don't necessarily need to go in and say, well, let's go study the tape and see if we really want to trade for Russ. We know we want to trade for Russell Wilson. So I love the whole energy from this whole press conference. It was a lot of fun.
Broncos country, how are you feeling about the energy right now in Dove Valley? How are you feeling as a Denver Broncos fan with the introduction of Russell Wilson, who's already gotten started going to the community, the Children's Hospital of Colorado? I mean, already making a difference. Look, he is a former Walter Payton Man of the Year winner. So now you got he and Justin Simmons. Those two teaming up to do stuff in the community together, Sayre, can be groundbreaking. And one of the things he did say, he's like, we want to win a lot of games and hopefully we can do that. He said, but I also want to, change a lot of lives, save a lot of lives in the process too. So we love that. I mean, right now there is excitement in Denver, and Broncos fans, you absolutely deserve it 100%. But now, in terms of getting down to business here, the Denver Broncos have to compete against the AFC West and the rest of the NFL. How does Russell Wilson feel about playing against Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, and the rest of the West? You get that coming up here in just a moment, including a bold proclamation from him in that. You get that coming up in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about BetOnline.net, the sponsor of today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. And it is that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us with March Madness. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and information. And BetOnline, they remain the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. As we jump into the second half action on today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. Once again, Broncos country, thank you so much for making Lockdown Broncos your first listen of the day. Listening wherever you get your podcasts or watching here on YouTube. If you're watching here on YouTube, please do us a favor, hit that thumbs up and that like button right now. Comment for the algorithm. Make sure you're subscribed and turn on that notification button so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage every single day, all year long, because for the true fan, there is never an off season. Sayre, there was a narrative early on in this offseason before the Broncos had any acquisition of quarterback. And you saw it commonly on social media, kind of like this low-hanging fruit. Who wants to come to the AFC West and have to compete against Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr? No quarterback wants to do that. Russell Wilson is a very bold proclamation. He's not afraid of the NFL. He's not afraid of the AFC West. So let's play the clip right here of what Russell Wilson said about coming to the Denver Broncos and playing specifically in the AFC West.
And then in terms of the AFC West, I want to play against the best. I don't fear anything. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sayre, I just can't help but feel like, man, that right there gets me excited. Like, if, there was Broncos players in attendance, Justin Simmons, Andrew Beck, Baron Browning, various others that were there. You love that mentality from a leader. Like, you don't want to shy away from it. And look, guys like Russell Wilson, who are elite athletes, not scared of competition, not scared of that. And the thing, like I said, in terms of the AFC West, he says, I want to play against the best. I don't fear anything. That is refreshing in a sense to see. And I don't think you're ever going to see any player come out and say, like, I fear something. The only bad thing that we've ever seen with a quarterback saying something like that was Sam Darnold saying, feels like he's seeing ghosts out there when playing against the New England Patriots. That'll forever live in infamy. But Russell Wilson, a very bold proclamation here. I mean, this was another one of those things I think that gets Broncos country excited, Sayre, and you just can't be excited enough about it. Like, this is a big move for Denver.
Well, and it's great to hear him say it just for the fact that how many times did we have that argument on Twitter? At least for me, I don't know about you, Cody, but I sat there on Twitter and I would just see this argument coming up so many times, whether it was about Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson or whoever else. They'd be like, well, why would he want to come to the AFC West where you got to play against Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Derek Carr even? That kind of stuff, like, that's not how football players and athletes
No,
operate, I would
not
think.
at all.
And as we're discovering, not only does Russell Wilson want to come to the AFC West, it feels like every big name free agent wants to come to the AFC West as well. So, man, it's just cool to hear him say that. It's cool to hear him talk like that. It's like putting everybody on notice. It's like putting everybody on blast and being like, look, like, I want to be here because I want to beat the best. I want to play against the best and compete against the best. And I think these other guys do too. I mean, it's like, well, what if we had drafted the next Mahomes? Would we not want the next Mahomes because we already play against Mahomes? I don't get that mindset. I don't get that kind of attitude towards it. So I'm pumped. It's great to see that Russell is pumped and that he understands what he's stepping into. I absolutely love it.
Well, and the thing is, too, quarterbacks, they play opposing defenses. They don't play each other. You're not going to see Russell Wilson taking on Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes or Derek Carr
Really?
one-on-one. They're playing defense, though. But now, Sayre, look, let's take a look at the AFC West, because what we're seeing right now, obviously the Russell Wilson move sent ripple effects across the National Football League. The AFC West in general has done so. But in return, they're looking at what's happening in the AFC West with the rise of Justin Herbert. You have Mahomes in the division. Now you have Russell Wilson. Other teams are making moves to help counteract that. Let's take a look at the Las Vegas Raiders. Look, they made a trade. They traded away Yannick Ngakoue for Roark Ya-Sin, but that was really contingent upon the fact that they did sign one of this year's biggest free agents in the pass rusher market in Chandler Jones. Now, he's going to be opposite of Max Crosby. As we know, that right there, Sayre, that has all the potential to be a force in the AFC West from the pass rusher standpoint. Just last week, we saw the Los Angeles Chargers go out and trade for Khalil Mack. So now you have Khalil Mack opposite of Joey Bosa, but then in free agency, they also sign J.C. Jackson. So the moves are there. Look, in Kansas City, they got Justin Reed. There's that. But it's like the AFC West is also trying to keep up with what Denver's doing, the way that Denver the last couple of years has been trying to keep up with what LA's been doing, what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing. Now, the AFC West, Sayre, it's going to be a bloodbath, and I'm all for it.
I am too. Everybody's trying to keep up with the Mahomeses, trying to keep up with Kansas City. Kansas City has been the contender, I think, going into the last few NFL seasons. Everybody's thinking, well, the AFC, it really runs through the Kansas City Chiefs, right? And so in their own division, I mean, everybody's just trying to one up the next. It's like, anything you can do, I can do better. Let's see how far this rabbit hole goes, because you're absolutely right. Khalil Mack is coming to the division. J.C. Jackson is coming into those are two defensive MVPs. I mean, those guys have won the defensive MVP award, or J.C. Jackson probably should have, with as many interceptions as he had. I think I'm thinking of Stephon Gilmore, but at any rate, I mean, those two are two of the best defenders in the game. And then obviously Chandler Jones. I didn't even think about his darn New England connection with the guys in Las Vegas now. And that makes sense that they trade Yannick Ngakoue now. You bring in Chandler Jones. Everybody in the division is being competitive with their roster moves. I mean, don't you wish there could be a game this weekend to see? I mean, I know obviously they need preparation time and practice time and all that stuff, but man, it would just be so much fun to see, as they've been going back and forth and up and down and left and right. It would be so much fun to see these teams go at it on the field as soon as possible.
The AFC West has really become the wild, wild west. It is an arms race. And look, we're in the Locked On NFL DM, and everybody's seeing the moves that the AFC West is making, and other hosts from other divisions like, oh my gosh, that division is going to be ridiculous. The national media is talking about the AFC West, to where you have national media pundits saying every AFC West game this season should be nationally televised. And not only that, just even the head-to-heads should be nationally televised as well. This is good. And look, there might be a small chance here. There could be 4 teams from the AFC West that make the playoffs this upcoming season. It's not impossible, however, highly unlikely, but I guarantee you, and I'd be willing to bet money now, at least 3 teams from the AFC West will make it into the playoffs this upcoming season. It is going to be brutal, Sayre. I know we're looking forward to the schedule release. Luckily for the Denver Broncos, they get to play a last-place schedule with Russell Wilson and the improvements that they've made on this entire free agency period. They're not even done yet with free agency, Sayre. So obviously a lot to break down right there. What will the Broncos do next, though, Broncos Country? Let us know in the comment section down below what you would like them to see. Let us know as well about what you thought about Russell Wilson's comments about the rest of the AFC West. Do you believe him? Does that give you excitement or belief in that the Broncos can overtake the division from the Kansas City Chiefs here in 2022? We'll dive into that a little bit more coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about the other sponsor of today's episode, Locked On Broncos. and that is rockauto.com. And if you need anything for your vehicle, rockauto.com, they have everything for your vehicle. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it is now impossible for your local chain auto parts stores to stock all the parts that you need for your vehicle. And why should you have to endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer that are only available in the warehouse that they have, and they get to choose the only brands that their warehouse happens to carry? You don't have to run into that issue with rockauto.com. And you get to save time and money today when you choose rockauto.com. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership when you can get them cheaper at rockauto.com? They're a family-owned business that's been serving auto parts customers online for over 20 years. 20 years of reliable service, and they have everything you could be looking for your vehicle today, whether it's brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, or even new carpet. So head over to rockauto.com right now to see all the parts available for your car or your truck, and write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box, so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Despite all the excitement in Broncos country with the introduction of Russell Wilson, the Broncos made, a smaller move in free agency just a couple of days ago. They have some other moves that they're anticipated to be making here in the next couple of weeks. And maybe, even by the time, maybe today, they might make a couple more moves here. But let's take a look at one of the moves here. Sayre, the Broncos added a tight end. And is it going to be game-changing in the sense where Broncos fans are like, okay, hey, tight end is officially set for the Broncos? Not so fast here, but the Broncos tight end that they just added, Sayre, he offers value in terms of the running game, and he's a pretty dang good run-blocking tight end. Not necessarily a receiving option. Who did the Broncos sign, and what is he going to bring to the table for Denver in 2022?
Well, Eric Tomlinson, Cody, is coming in, and he's been with a variety of teams throughout his career, including the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Giants as well. And I think that obviously one thing that he brings to the table, the primary thing that he brings to the table, and my dog is trying to tell us all about it. I don't know if you can hear that, but she's trying to tell us all about Eric Tomlinson. She's excited about the move. He's going to be a blocking tight end, Cody. And I think that when this move came in, everybody's just like sitting there on, refreshing Twitter, even all throughout the day and in the evening, just waiting for the Broncos to do something. And then all of a sudden you get a tweet from Mike Kliss. It's like the Broncos have signed, and it's like, oh boy, what is he going to say next? And it's like Eric Tomlinson, tight end. It's like, oh, okay, well, what's this guy going to be? Well, he's essentially, you remember, Mercedes Lewis, he's kind of been following around Nathaniel Hackett from the Jacksonville Jaguars to the Green Bay Packers now. Mercedes Lewis isn't necessarily a guy that's going to catch a ton of passes for the offense, but he's going to come in and he's going to be an enforcer in the blocking department. That's exactly what Eric Tomlinson is going to be for the Denver Broncos. He's going to be a blocking tight end, a blocking specialist. You put his relative athletic score, Cody, up against, other tight ends, and he's way at the bottom. But you put him up there with offensive tackles, and he's actually pretty high up there in terms of an offensive tackle. So he's pushing 270 pounds at, I believe, 6'6". So, he's a big guy, and he's going to come in there, and he's going to be able to block for this running game. I think he's in 3, maybe tight end 4, depending on, what position they technically classify Andrew Beck. So I think he's just kind of one of those guys. It's going to be one of the 53, but nothing major, obviously. This is like you said, it's not the tight end 1 move. This is a back end of the roster type of move, and they just get a guy that they feel can really help them in the running game.
Well, I think the Broncos don't necessarily need him to come up and be this big-time pass catcher. I do think that Denver will still probably add another tight end. Sayre, whether it's in free agency, look, Austin Hooper just became available. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns released him. But then they could also look in this year's NFL draft. And as we know, still, Denver has 8 picks in this year's draft. What do we see for George Paton? Even though when the Broncos had, I think, 6 or 7 a couple, like last year, he got more. Like, he got 4 more picks there. I still imagine he can maybe move up into round 2. He might be able to spend some of that back-end capital to be able to do that. Don't count out George Paton just yet. Like, there's a lot of things they could do at tight end, but obviously for the Broncos, now this assures that, hey, guess what? Albert Okwuegbunam's not going to have to probably have his hand in the dirt and have to block, kind of how we saw Noah Fant, Albert O last year. They're not going to probably be designated to be that blocker. So we will probably see them flexed out into the slot, maybe split up on the outside a little bit, while you have Tomlinson playing in line the true wide position there. So this is actually a pretty solid move here for the Broncos. Does it rule out maybe them bringing back Eric Saubert, though? I think is another question. I hope that they at least take a look at it because, Sayre, what have we learned? You can't have enough tight ends in the National Football. Can't have enough anything in the NFL. Maybe outside of quarterback. Quarterback's one thing there too. But Sayre, my biggest question too, what's next here for this Denver Broncos team? Well, the reports seem to suggest that they're going to be looking at offensive line and cornerback as their next primary targets here in the NFL free agency period. Now, we've seen some cornerbacks moving around, but those are primarily the outside guys. There's a lot of nickel options still available here on the table, including Bryce Callahan, Chris Harris Jr., Isaiah Oliver. Denver is looking almost at every option here, and they could be in line for multiple defensive backs. So, let's see what happens there, man. I'm so excited to break it all down, man, because the Broncos aren't done yet. This is just exciting times for Denver.
That's right. They're not done yet, and we don't know what the cap space officially looks like at this point. I mean, we can guess, we can speculate, but the Broncos could also move some money around to really sign whoever they want at this point. We're seeing a lot of teams do that, so I think it's important to be mindful of that. Maybe the Broncos don't have as much cash on hand as other teams, or maybe they do. It's hard to know at this point, but they are going to address some needs. A little disappointing to see that as the right tackle market, Cody, continues to unfold. A guy like Morgan Moses, who I felt was a really good fit in terms of coming over with tight end coach Jake Moreland, who was an assistant O-line coach with the Jets, and Morgan Moses was there last year. He signed a really reasonable 3-year, $15 million deal to go with the Baltimore Ravens. And that is an outstanding move for them. It makes you wonder, where's the market going to be at for other guys on this right tackle market? Because right now it kind of seems to be like we talked about with safeties in the last episode. Is it up? Is it down? Is it right in the middle? Where's it at? We don't know, because Morgan Moses is a very quality player signing for $5 million per season. You got to expect if a guy like Lyle Collins hits the market, he's going to get more than that. But at the same time, it's tough to know. So I think that's obviously the next step for the Denver Broncos, is to find out who's going to be your starting right tackle. And then, of course, shortly after the press conference is done, what does Russell Wilson go and do, Cody? I just saw this pop up.
Yep.
He goes and tweets a picture of him and Bobby Wagner saying the best is yet to come. He's the greatest player he's ever played with. I mean, I wouldn't rule that out, Broncos country. I know we talked about it's not exactly necessary after the Josie Jewell signing, but at the same time, what could the team do with Bobby Wagner in the lineup next to Josie Jewell? I don't know. Maybe that's still on the table for the Denver Broncos.
Are the Broncos at this point too, and I wouldn't be surprised, maybe we could see a Russell Wilson contract extension coming. We could see some player restructures coming here in the next couple of days, maybe the next week here for this Broncos team, because they can do that. I mean, they can really go all in if they really want to, Sayre. Like, they might have a really strong window here to compete for the AFC West, the NFL, and also for a potential Super Bowl because of these moves here. And you bring in these contending type players, like you said on yesterday's show, you want to make contending moves as a team that is now in contention. Denver has the opportunity to do so right now. They're not really strapped for money at this point. They can really fluctuate the cap if they want to and restructure some deals to spread out some of that salary cap. And hey, it's going to continue to rise year after year with obviously the introduction of sports books and betting around the National Football League. Don't tell Calvin Ridley that, though. But outside of that, Sayre, I appreciate you, my friend, as always, sharing your thoughts here with Broncos Country alongside myself here on the Locked On Broncos podcast. You can get this podcast free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format. You can watch us here on YouTube. Once we get to 10K, I'm going to be doing a jersey giveaway alongside Sayre Bedinger. We are going to give away a Russell Wilson Color Rush Broncos jersey to one lucky subscriber here on the show. But with that said, Broncos Country, thank you so much for tuning in. We have you covered with all the latest free agency news and more, everything pertaining to your Denver Broncos. Make sure you make Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. We'll see you next time for a brand new episode of the show.